Hello, everyone. Come on in, grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your snack. I hope that you have a few minutes to sit down and chat with me this evening. I have my phone with me. I think tonight, to keep my screen from freezing up, I'll be checking my phone for comments. We are a few minutes early, so I'm going to just make sure that everything is set up and make sure that you can hear me okay. So if you are here, I would love to hear from you. Say hello and let me know if you can hear me okay. This time I adjusted, pardon me, the volume. So I'm hoping that there's no echo. So if you can hear me, say hello. Let me know everything sounds okay. Let me see if I can pull up the video on my phone. Yes, there we are. Hi, Susan. Hi, Tracy. I'm so glad you're here. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Maybe I'll be able to keep up with the comments a little bit better this week. We'll see. I'm not usually able to keep up with them, and I usually have to go back at the end of the video and see what everybody said. We'll see. But we have a lot of pictures to share, and we have some really fun topics to talk about, so that I hope you have maybe an hour, maybe a little more, maybe a little less to spend with me. And if not, you can always come back and catch the replay. So since we're a few minutes early, I'm just gonna clear my throat. I'm sorry. Yeah, y'all can hear me. Good. I adjusted the settings. Last week it sounded like it was a little echoey. And so hopefully this week is a little bit better. How is everybody doing? I hope you had a fantastic weekend and that you were able to have some kind of creative time, or at least since we talked last Monday, I hope sometime in that week you've had some time to create. Of course, I've seen lots of pictures come through on our group, and so I know a lot of you have been really busy. Again, we're just a couple minutes early, so say hello, grab a snack. If you are watching this and you see the little red live button up at the top, then you're catching the live video. And if you don't see that, then you're watching the replay. But either way, I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear what you've been working on. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. If I can't get to them, or if I don't know the answer, more than likely somebody else will. And my screen is frozen, so I'm hoping that we're not going to have issues tonight. Oh goodness, hold on a second. I'm hoping that I'm not frozen. Don't you love technology? Okay, it looks like I'm still going. Okay. Oh, hello everybody. I'm so glad y'all are here. Hello Kitty. Hello Wendy Jo, Tracy. I'm hoping, hello Nancy. Hi Mom, downstairs. I'm hoping everything is moving smoothly because it is 8:01 and I'm ready to get started. So it sounds like you can hear me. It looks like we're still going. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I have some really fun pictures to share with you all. I'm gonna move my screen. Let's see, the slideshow is what we're gonna start with tonight. And then we have some topics that we can talk about. So slideshow. And let's see, I have 4 people sharing pictures tonight. And we are going to start with Kitty's pictures. I'm thinking I really like the idea of doing a post on Monday morning, and that seems to be working out okay. So if you have pictures throughout your week, save them somewhere where you can grab them and share them in the post. And I usually post that sometime Monday morning. Okay, we are going to start with Kitty's pictures first this week. And Kitty shared a really fun idea for a light box. Okay, so you guys, if you watch my videos, you see that I have that little light pad. I ordered that from Amazon and it was like $20, and it's fantastic for tracing your patterns. But let me show you what Kitty has done. Oops, hold on a second. There we go. I must have Monday brain. Okay, y'all, Kitty took a Pyrex baking dish, a clear baking dish, and she turned it upside down, and underneath she put 2, it was like battery-powered light. 2 battery-powered lights underneath the Pyrex, and that shines through the glass and gives her a flat surface to trace her patterns. Now, how ingenious is this? I really love how creative minds work so well, and that she figured out a way with things that she already had to create a light box. So I absolutely love your idea, Kitty. If I hadn't already purchased that light pad, I'd be doing the same exact thing now. So I'm really glad you shared that picture. And let me show you what else Kitty shared with us. She just finished up the flower stained glass mystery puzzle quilt. That's a mouthful. Look at her quilt, y'all. I absolutely love this. Now, Kitty, you're going to have to tell me, because it's hard to see from the picture, how wide was your sashing that you put in between your borders, because it looks really nice. And I like that a lot. And I really love the yellow bright flower. I think it just pops off of your quilt. What a fantastic job. She says she's going to put this in her sewing space. And so, I love that. I hope you had a lot of fun with this, Kitty. And I hope that you learned a lot. And I hope that when you see it, whenever you're in your sewing space, that you're really proud of yourself, because you should be. I love that so much. Good job, Kitty. Let's see. Next, and just to let you know, I'm not looking at the comments while we're doing the slideshow, because I want everything to run really smooth. And once we're done with all the pictures, then I'll try to catch the comments before we move on to the topics. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them, and we'll get to those comments in just a minute. Okay, Kitty, I loved your pictures. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, we have a quilt by Barbara. Hoping that shows up. This is a throw size memory quilt that she is making for her son, and is going to measure 65 by 90 when it's done. And she is using shirts that belong to his dad, and so there's a lot of sentimental value in this quilt, and I absolutely love that about memory quilts, and how special they are, how much meaning is tied into the quilt. I think this quilt will be worth so much to your son who gets this quilt. What I found interesting, Barbara, is that you're using a thread by Glide that glows in the dark to quilt your quilt. And so I'm really hoping that you share some pictures when you're quilting and after you're done. I know it'll probably be hard to show the glowing in the dark feature of that thread, but I hope that maybe you can share a link to that thread on our group page, and so that we can check it out. I've never used a glow-in-the-dark thread, and so you have my curiosity up. I would love to see more about the thread. And this quilt, looking at your picture, reminds me of a quilt that I did several years ago for a client, and her husband was getting ready to have surgery, and he was going to stay in the hospital for about a week. And so she gave me all of his Superman t-shirts, and we made a quilt that he could snuggle with in the hospital during his recovery. And so when I see your quilt, that's what it reminds me of. But I think your son is going to love your quilt, and I'm hoping that you keep us updated on the progress of this quilt as you're making it, quilting it. I absolutely love that. Y'all. That's better. I go all day without talking, and then when I do talk, I lose my voice. Okay. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing your pictures with us. And now we are going to move to Kathy's table runner. Y'all look, my brain is working. Ta-da! Okay, now there's two pictures that I want you to see. The very top picture is her table runner before quilting, and then the bottom picture is her table runner after the quilting process has been done. And I know the pictures are a little bit small, but I wanted to get them both on there so you could see the before and the after. This just looks like it is this time of the year to make these kinds of projects, and she's making this for her table, her kitchen table. And I'm hoping, Kathy, that you share pictures of your table all set up with your table runner when you're done. I've always loved like the maple leaf block. It's one of those traditional quilt blocks that I will always love that block. I used that quilt block on my great big quilt that I showed in my show and tell video. Good job, Kathy. We love your table runner. And then we have one more picture. I'm going to be struggling tonight, y'all, with my voice. I hope that that's not too aggravating. Next, we're moving on to Rena's first ever t-shirt quilt. And so this is so exciting. I always get excited when someone says this, you know, they're making their first t-shirt quilt. I always get super excited. And here we are. Rena, I think you did so great. I'm so proud of you. I know, you know, I remember doing my very first t-shirt quilt and how nervous I was when I actually started cutting apart my t-shirts. I was like, I almost started hyperventilating because I don't think I breathed through the first, you know, 5 or 6 shirts, cutting them apart. And then after that, it does get so much easier the more you do it. And I just think you did a fantastic job. So, you know, you'll have to post and tell us a little bit more about your quilt. Are these your shirts, or are you making this quilt for someone else? I'm always curious about the history of the shirts and who they belong to. So you'll have to update us and tell us more, Rena. I think you did a fantastic job. And I guess my most important question, or the one that I'm most curious about, is how did you enjoy the process? And is it something that you would make again? Would you make another one? And I hope that you say yes. But t-shirt quilts aren't for everybody. But most people, once they make the first one, they make a whole bunch more. So I would love to hear your story, what you thought you were making it, and if you plan on making any more. So those are our pictures for this evening. And so I think we can pause for a minute and I'll take a sip of tea and hopefully my voice will come back, and I'm going to check your comments and say hello and make sure that we're still rolling. So Vicky says hello, Maureen's here, Sheila's here. My mom says she's having buffering problems and she will keep trying. Mom, I don't know if it's you or if it's me. I'm connected to the fast internet, but things are freezing up on my end too. So I don't know what's going on with our internet. Deborah's here, hello, and Bonnie. Kitty's here. And she said it's a 5/8 black ribbon she purchased at Joann's. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't know that I know that's not what I used. I used yarn on mine, but I don't know that I bought any or even saw that at the store. So I really like the thickness of your sashing on your quilt. You did such a good job on that. Kathy says she'll post pictures of her table runner. Oh, it actually functions as a long placemat on our bar. Yeah, I would think a bar would be perfect for the size of that. I'm hoping that we're still going. Let's see. Evelyn says, what batting do you use on your t-shirt quilts? So my current favorite one is from Joann's. It's their brand, and you know, recently they changed their brand. If I had a package, I would show it to you, but it's an 80/20, and it's sort of like a light cream color. It's not white, and it's not like the Warm and Natural, that really dark or tan color. It's sort of in between those colors. But that's the one that I've been using on the last 7 or 8 quilts, and I really like it. If I'm doing a quilt and they don't want it to be very heavy, then I will use an all polyester batting because those are so much lighter. But for the most part, I use an 80/20, and it's the Joann's brand. And the name of that escapes me right this minute, but you can check out Joann's. That's the one that I use. Wow, it's so great to see everybody here. Tina says, I used a light under a glass table. That works perfectly too. And if I had a glass table, I would have used it, used that. Bonnie, I see that you did not get a notification that we were live. I don't know why you're not getting notified. Everybody else, I have a question. Are you getting notified when I go live, or are you just coming to the group page because you know that we're going live and you catch it from our group? I'm wondering if it's a setting that maybe Bonnie can change, or if no one gets notified. I don't know how all of that works, but we'll try and get you straight, Miss Bonnie. Okay, I'm so glad everybody is here. Not frozen, not frozen. Good. All right, it looks like we can keep going then, because it shows that we are still live. Kitty says she gets notified. Nancy says I see it on Facebook. Debbie did not get notified. Peggy did. So I don't know if maybe it's a setting. It pops up on my news feed, and my mom does not get notified. So it seems to be a mix across the board of some do and some don't. I don't know. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to look into it because maybe it's a setting that some of us have checked of, you know, let me get notified when live videos are up, and maybe that's what it is, and maybe it's something else. I don't know, but we'll try and figure it out before next week. All right, so who's ready to talk about some topics? We have 7 topics, and then I want to do a quick experiment before we go for the evening. So do not let me forget about that. I'm going to put my phone down so I'm not seeing your comments. Just know that I'm not ignoring you. And if I don't get to your comment or your question, then when we're done tonight, I'd always go back and I read through everything. So tag me if you have a question. And if you're here, I'm so glad you are here with me and spending time with us. And we are moving on to our topics. Let's see. So our first topic for this evening is from Vicky. So Vicky posted a picture on our group today, and she just finished up a t-shirt quilt, and she used t-shirt material as her binding. And so I wanted to talk about some pros and cons when it comes to using the extra t-shirt material from our t-shirts of our quilt as our binding. I just went through, and I'm sure that I forgot some stuff. I'm sure that when I'm laying in bed, I'll be like, oh yeah, I meant to add that. But these are right off the top of my head, some pros and cons for using the t-shirt material as your binding, and a couple of tips. And let's just go through them really quick. So some of the pros that I would say after doing several t-shirt quilts, and to be really honest, I've only done maybe 3 quilts where I've used the t-shirt material as my binding. And it's because when we get to the cons, these are things that I dealt with. So some of the pros would be that if you made your binding from the t-shirt material, then your binding is going to perfectly match and blend into the top of your quilt. You've used all of those same colors in your quilt top, and it's going to blend perfectly. It's going to look awesome. You also have all of the material already provided. We use most of the time one side of the shirt. Sometimes we use both sides of the shirt, but there's always material at the bottom that doesn't get used up. And so that's already provided, and we don't have to spend extra money to purchase the binding material. And so that is another pro. And I would say, as a pro to using the t-shirt material, your binding is going to be super thick and durable. It's going to last forever. You know, the edges of our quilts get a lot of abuse. They get dragged on the floor, they're folded, they get a lot of wear. So it would make sense to me that if you were to use t-shirt material, that is going to provide a long-lasting binding, a way to finish the edges of your quilt. However, as a binding, your binding is going to be super thick, and so it's going to be so much more difficult to work with to bind your quilt if you are using the t-shirt material. Another con is that the t-shirt material is stretchy. Now, you could add interfacing to help you cut nice straight strips of binding, and that just adds a little bit more thickness to your binding strips. But it does help a little bit in cutting and keeping everything nice and straight. Another, I would say, disadvantage versus con, really. It's that if you're cutting up your t-shirts and you're using those as your binding, you're going to be connecting lots of smaller pieces to make a binding, where if you just pull out some yardage and you start cutting strips, you're going to be done so much faster making your binding versus using all of the extra cutoffs from your t-shirts. And so if time is an issue, then that might be a disadvantage. So a couple of tips that I thought I would share if you were interested in using a t-shirt material as your binding is that instead of cutting, well, I usually use like a 2.5 inch strip for my binding most of the time. And we're all different. That number might be different from you. And it's all good. But instead of cutting a 2.5 inch strip, you might want to increase that to a 3 inch or a little bit wider than what you're normally used to allow that thickness to roll over to the other side of your quilt. And you might also want to consider certainly machine sewing your binding either to the front or the back of the quilt to attach your binding, but to ease in finishing the binding on the other side, you might want to hand sew it. And some of us don't mind that, and some of us absolutely despise hand sewing. So that might be another disadvantage, but I think you know, that's a lot of thickness if you are finishing the binding by machine. And I think you might have an easier time using the t-shirts as your binding if you hand sew it. So I thought we would just go over some pros and cons. Again, I really feel like I'm forgetting something. But you could also pause this video when we're done with the live or come back and write some notes down to remind you of some of these things in the future if you ever consider using the t-shirts as your binding. So I hope that that is helpful. And Vicki, by the way, I think your quilt turned out fantastic. It really, really did. All right, so that is our first topic. And if y'all are just joining us, please know that I'm so glad you're here, and I will look at your comments after we're done with the topics, and then I have a little bit of an experiment before we go. So that was topic number 1, and topic number 2 is, let's see. Yay, I'm getting the hang of this. An art quilt collaboration with Kathy. Okay, y'all. So back in July, and if I remember right, it was July the 4th. Now you can go back on our Creative Crew Group page to July the 4th and see this post from Kathy. She had posted this picture of a little heart mosaic art quilt that she had just finished. And she got so much interaction on that post and so many questions. And I was one of the people who was so intrigued by her little art quilt. And so Kathy and I got to talking in Messenger, and we came up with an idea to do a collaboration project because I had never made a quilt like this. And I found out that Kathy had a blog. So I went over and I read Kathy's blog, and it was so well written, and she photo documented the whole process. And it was so fantastic that even though I enjoyed reading Kathy's blog, I could have just looked at the pictures and known what to do. And so that's what I think of a well-written blog or instructions is when I can just quickly look at pictures and know what to do. But I also enjoyed reading all of her description as well, but it was so well done. And so we talked about her blog, and I said, you know, if I make up a pattern, would you, and I sent it to you, would you make one and write a blog about it? And I could share your pictures in a video, and you could share the video link in your blog. And so that's what we've done. Okay, so keep your eyes open. I designed a little art quilt of a hummingbird. And it was totally inspired by the hummingbirds in our backyard. And I sent it to Kathy. So I have 2 examples, and I'm going to make one together with you in a video. And I'm going to share Kathy's example pictures, and I'm going to share a link to Kathy's blog in the description box of that video. And we are giving away the hummingbird pattern, and so you can go to the description box of that video when it's posted, print off your hummingbird pattern, and make this along with us. And so it's really going to be an introduction to mosaic style quilts. Kathy uses Steam-A-Seam 2 to make hers. I've done mine 2 other completely different ways, and when I make the video, I'm going to make it a 3rd way. And so I really think that there's no right or wrong when it comes to making a quilt of this nature. And so I'm really hoping to give some really great examples of different methods to do this, because I'll be also sharing Kathy's method, and she's going to share it on her blog. So I cannot wait. I'm filming the video on Friday. It's on my planner, and Kathy is emailing me pictures that I can use in my video. And I will have her blog link, and so this is going to be so much fun. I've been excited about this for a couple weeks. We've been working on this kind of in secret, getting everything prepared, and it's going to be so much fun. So that is topic number 2, and I cannot wait to get started on that with everybody. So we are going to move on to topic number 3. Hold on one second. Yay, this is a fun one. Okay, so this week we've had 43 new members join our group, and that makes me so happy. And so just in this last week, I have seen pictures of people receiving the quilts and the projects that you've made for them. Those are some of my favorite pictures, to see the people actually receiving their quilts. When I make a quilt on commission, I so hope that when they gift that quilt to somebody that they send me pictures, because I always love to see that part. I've seen fabric stash pictures. I've seen rag quilts and patchwork quilts, t-shirt quilts and memory quilts, multimedia art projects, machine embroidery, paper piecing, and English paper piecing. I've seen pillows, bags, purses, coin purses, table runners, centerpieces, applique art quilts. That turtle quilt, did y'all see that? That was awesome. I've seen posts for you guys asking for advice or asking for help, and what I've noticed the most is I've seen a lot of people offering advice and offering help and encouragement. And so that was my goal with this page, is that it would be a place for everyone to come, quilting, sewing, crochet, painting, pottery, multi-different genres of crafting, where you could showcase your work, or you could ask for advice, ask for help, or just come and, you know, give some encouragement to somebody. And so it's really working out, and I'm just really so pleased with how this group is going, and we are growing so fast. I think it's 1,600 and some members, and so I think that's so great. I'm so happy about that. And I really love the diversity of all the different types of things that I see when I scroll through the page. And please don't get me wrong. I'm a member of embroidery groups, and they're just embroidery. I'm a member of quilting groups, and it's just quilting. I myself am a multimedia type of artist, and I have a passion for all of it. And so I love that this group shares all of that. And so I'm really enjoying seeing all of the different pictures that come through and all the different projects. And sometimes I get inspiration from seeing your pictures of maybe trying out new things. And so I love that. So that was our topic number 3. Some of our topics we're going to go through quick. Topic number 4. And I have a question when you see this. And I won't be able to read your comments as fast. And I'll come through. But when I have this topic up, is that hard for you to read? And because I put so much on the screen, I'm hoping that the writing isn't too small for you to see. But we're going to talk about it anyway. But I'd really like some feedback on, is that writing too small? I know for me, if I were looking at my phone, I'd have to put my glasses on. So Bonnie asked, what are the advantages of paper piecing? So paper piecing is something that you either love or you hate. I've never talked to someone who just started doing paper piecing and immediately loved it. But the more that they did it, they fell in love with it. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. And I'm just going to read from what I wrote because that helps me not forget anything. But quilters can create sharp points without the difficulty of matching corners and points. And so oftentimes in my patterns, I will include a paper piecing template because it helps you get those pretty exact points without having to do difficult cutting. You know, this t-shirt quilt that I'm in the process of doing, I'm making a series, and in one of those videos, we're making pinwheel blocks. And to make a 6.5-inch pinwheel block, we start out with 4 squares that are 3 7/8 wide by 3 7/8 wide. You know, if you're just a beginner and you're trying to learn everything there is about quilting, that 7/8 can be really confusing. And that's just an example of some of the confusing measurements that you can deal with when you're cutting pieces for quilt blocks. So when you're doing paper piecing, there's none of that confusing, exact, spot on. It has to be right, or your quilt block is going to be too small or too large, and you're going to have to cut your points off or cut your seam allowances off. There's none of that with paper piecing. Patterns such as the flying geese that typically involve using pieces that are cut on the bias, you know, the stretchy part, are usually easier to work with if you are doing a foundation paper piecing. And some people use fabric as their foundation. And so you can search all about that on YouTube. Some of my earlier quilts, I don't think you can see it. Nope, you can't see it from here. But in my show and tell videos, I showed those crazy quilts. I mean, my mom has one and I have my Nana's. Those are actually foundation pieced, but they're foundation on fabric instead of paper. So, yeah, it gives you perfect piecing every time. Odd shapes and angles are made more simple due to the foundation actually stabilizing your work. And you can use small little tiny pieces that you ordinarily would not be able to use if you are just doing normal patchwork assembly. And I can't really give you any examples of my paper piecing patterns because usually those pieces are pretty big. But there's so many patterns out there that are really intricate and have small little pieces. And I just don't know how you would do that and keep an accurate seam allowance if you were not doing it using paper piecing. It eliminates the need for exact and precise cutting, and accurate seam allowances. So if you are someone who struggles with sewing an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, then you don't have to worry about that with paper piecing. I think that's an advantage. And then there are so many different ways to do foundation paper piecing. A lot of people actually sew through the paper, and then a lot of people do what I like to do, and that's sewing next to the paper and reusing my pattern over and over until it basically falls apart, and then I just print off a new one. So if you are really new to paper piecing, if it's something that you've never done, you know, when you have some good spare time, go to YouTube, because it's just an endless array of videos. There's so many different techniques, like I mentioned, the fabric foundation, paper foundation, sewing through the paper, sewing next to the paper, and quilter to quilter. If you love doing paper piecing, we're all going to like different techniques. I know a lot of people who love to sew through the paper, and that seems to be the easiest way for them to grasp the idea. And then there's other quilters who are like me, who don't like to sew through the paper, and we sew next to the paper. So that might sound all confusing if you've never done it. So sit down on YouTube and just do searches for foundation paper piecing, and take lots of notes. And then, you know what, sit down with some tea or some coffee and some patience, because it can be really confusing at first. And I don't think that many people who enjoy paper piecing really enjoyed it at the beginning, or picked it right up and didn't have issues trying to figure it out. It's a process, but once you get it, then you enjoy it so much, and then you enjoy the benefits of the precise piecing that you get from using the foundation. So I hope that explains some of the advantages of doing paper piecing, and why a lot of quilters use that technique in our work. Making sure I don't forget anything. I think that's everything. So go to YouTube and do lots of searches. I do have quite a few videos on my channel. They're all the same technique, where I sew next to the paper. So there's other ways to do it. No right way, no wrong way, but there's a way that works best for you, and really you have to figure that out. Okay, we're moving on to topic number 5. In case anyone has just come in, know that I'm so glad you're here, and I'm going to catch up with you after we're done with the topics. And we are going to move to topic number 5. And this question is from Shelly. So Shelly asked, can we do a tutorial about collage style t-shirt quilts with sashing? So I have just an example up here for you, Shelly, because unfortunately my schedule up through until the new year is jam-packed, and I have a couple of quilts to do that I have commissions for, that are collage style quilts, but they're not with sashing like what you're asking for. And so in order for me to stay on task with my commissions, I probably won't have time to make a quilt that you're asking about, but you can see here an example. And what I suggest is that when this video is done, you pause the video and you take some notes, because if you grab some graph paper and you graph out your t-shirt quilt blocks, you can easily allow for sashing around each one of your blocks. And we can do maybe a workshop about this if we need to. I would have time to do that. Pardon me. But I know I wouldn't have time to make a whole series and make a quilt. But we could do a workshop. But you'll see in this example, using my 2-inch grid for this crib size layout. And so each one of these little blocks represents a finished 2 inches. And so looking at the grid, you could easily add a 2-inch border or sashing around each one of your t-shirts as you cut them out and sew everything together. One of the reasons why I love using graph paper is because for me, it takes a lot of the brain work out, and I'm just counting blocks, doing some multiplication, like 2 times 5 is 10 inches. Add half an inch for a seam allowance, and I'm done. So I love using the graph paper. But yes, this is an example of like a collage style quilt with sashing. And if y'all would like, we could do a little workshop together. And maybe that'll be helpful. And maybe just seeing this picture will give you an example to go by, and maybe that'll be enough. So Shelly, I would love to hear back from you, and you know, give me some feedback on what, if you have more questions, if we need to do a workshop, what all do we need to cover in that workshop? So I hope that that is helpful. And we have 2 more topics. Topic number 6 is from Tracy. So we're going to start with her question, and then I have 2 picture examples to show you. So Tracy asked, she's making a collage style quilt that has buttons and pockets included. She doesn't want to quilt. She does not want to use the same quilting design all over the quilt. And should she stitch in the ditch quilt around her buttons and her pockets? And so certainly I think from quilter to quilter, the answer is going to be different. And there's no right answer and no wrong answer. I will show you what I do, and maybe that'll give you some suggestions. And maybe someone watching the video will have some excellent ideas too. And so that's one of the other reasons I love this group, is because everyone's so willing to share ideas and knowledge. So I have 2 picture examples of what I do when I have a quilt that has buttons or pockets. And usually on my t-shirt quilts, I do a simple meandering quilting stitch on those types of quilts for a couple reasons. Most people that I'm making t-shirt or memory quilts for, they don't necessarily pay attention to the quilting, but the quilting serves a function of keeping those layers together. It also adds dimension to their quilt, but they don't necessarily care about designs in the quilting. I've had a handful of people ask if you could do stars or hearts in the quilting, and other than that, they just want to be able to use the quilt. So I do a simple meandering around all of my quilt. And when I get to the pockets, let's take a look. And I'm hoping that this picture is big enough. Right in the center, we have 2 shirts come together. There's a set of buttons that run through the middle. On the left side is a t-shirt quilt or t-shirt block with a pocket. And on the other side is a button front shirt that has a pocket. So I was able to do my meandering stitch around the button part of the shirt. And when I came to the pocket, I stitched in the ditch around the pocket. That really does 2 things. It stabilizes that pocket in place and really secures it down in the quilt. But you can also use the pocket. Get stuff little notes in there. I think it's a fun, functional part of the quilt. So I like to stitch in the ditch around my pockets. Let's take a look at my second example. Here's another one. You can see 2 pockets in this picture, and then again the set of buttons that run through that block. On this quilt, I did not stitch around those buttons but I stitched the ditch right where the button opening of the shirt is on both sides. And then I did a stitch in the ditch around the pockets. So I hope that that is helpful, or gives you some ideas. And I'm also hoping that other people will share maybe pictures of what they do if they have a shirt or some other clothing item that has buttons or pockets, because there's really so many things you could do. These are just examples of what I usually do. I'm hoping that that is helpful for you, Tracy, and keep us updated and share pictures on what you decide to do with your quilt. So that is topic number 6. I think we're moving through. We have one more topic. Let me take a sip of tea. Okay. Now, Miss Kitty had a question this evening, and she wants to make a quilt without a binding. And so she asked, after flipping all the layers right side out, so she stitched around the entire perimeter, left an opening, is pulling everything right side out. Can she quilt that without it puckering or pulling at the seams? And where's the best place to start quilting? And so, Kitty, I don't know if you've gone back to your post, but Beverly and Sandy gave you some really great advice. And I'm not sure if anybody else has gone on your post since then. But definitely read their comments. They mentioned basting and using a walking foot and to lower the feed dogs. Those are all really great pieces of advice to avoid the puckering that you're going to maybe experience. And I'll tell you, I haven't done a quilt like this in a long time. But you can get puckering on a normal quilt. So that's something that we all have to think about when quilting our quilts. And I'll tell you what I experienced the very last time I did that, and that was before I started making bindings. It's, again, a quilt that I shared in my slideshow. It's got all the different colors with a black border near the edge of the quilt. What happened with me is I flipped all my layers and got everything basted. Now, I probably didn't baste it enough, and I think it was Beverly, maybe it was Sandy, who said to baste like every 4 or 5 inches. I know I didn't do that, because who has time for that? But it probably would have really helped if I did, because what happened to me, and I was doing some very simple stitch in the ditch around that black border, if you can remember that quilt, is that I don't even remember where I started, but I was sewing along, and you can see it on the back side of my quilt. It sort of pushed the layers in opposite directions, and I had a lot of extra bulking, backing, and batting towards the edge of my quilt on the right side. Now, again, I was very inexperienced when I made that quilt. There's probably a lot of things I would do differently now, but certainly basting your quilt very close together, keeping all those layers together would really help. And if you want to avoid all of that, maybe keeping the quilting simple, like tying your quilt or hand quilting your quilt, to avoid the pressure of the machine maybe distorting those layers. That might be the best way to go. Usually with quilting your quilts, most people would say to start at the center and work your way out. And what I would do, pardon me, is I would go on YouTube and search pillowcase method for quilts or quilts without binding. I did a quick search before we started the live video tonight, and both of those came up with videos, and I think that would be really helpful. Certainly you can do it. I think you'll just need to slow down and really pay attention to your basics, like your basting and the pressure on your presser foot, and maybe doing free motion work, and lowering those feed dogs and having more control of your quilting. That might help. And if anybody else has any useful tips for Kitty, I would really appreciate, because again, it's been so long since I did a quilt like that, but I certainly know that you can do it. And so I'm hoping that between Beverly and Sandy, that maybe they've given you some really great tips, and maybe somebody else will also come on who likes to finish their quilts that way, and maybe they can share too. I'm hoping. One thing for sure is I don't know the answer to a lot of questions, but I'm a good detective and we can figure stuff out together. It usually comes down to a quick search on YouTube and watching some videos for me anyway. It's like a free university of knowledge. So Kitty, keep us updated on your quilt, and I hope that you share pictures with us and let us know how it goes. And I'm sure that if you finish your quilt like this, that you'll probably end up having tips that you can help share with somebody else that might be wanting to do the same thing. I'm going to have another Tic Tac. So that is all our topics. However, I have one more. It's not really a topic, but I saw this post on Facebook the other day, and it really struck a chord with me, and so I knew that I had to share it. So let me pull it up. Let me check comments real quick first, though. Everybody's saying they lost me. I hope that it's probably the internet on my end, y'all. It's probably the internet on my end, and I apologize. Sometimes it works really super fast, and then other nights it is not fast at all, and I think that that might be creating an issue. So let me move on to this topic, and I'm going to pull it up. And I'll tell you the reason why I wanted to share this with everyone. Because a lot of times you'll hear, you know, the saying, fake it till you make it. But I agree with this post so much, like it really resonated with me. Because I see so many of your posts, and I'm going to tell you that you are your hardest critic. You are going to be your hardest judge, unless you enter your quilt into a quilt show. And then you've really just asked for it. But on a normal everyday day, you are your hardest, worst critic. And I also see, you know, the nature of my videos on YouTube bring in a lot of viewers that are really new to quilting. And I love that my videos cater to people who are just learning, people who have been doing it for a while, and also are good for people who've been doing it for years. I love to work on all levels, from the very first quilt to someone who's made 1,000 quilts. But what I notice is that some of you who have just started maybe a couple months ago get really frustrated when you have issues. And I want you to know that it's okay to have issues. It's okay to run into problems. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to reach out for help. And what I don't want you to do is to lose sight of where you are now versus where you were a month ago or 3 months ago. Because with each time you sit down at your machine or you sit down to cut your fabric blocks, each time you read a new pattern, you're learning and you're improving. And what I really want you to try to avoid is seeing a picture that someone posted and you see this magnificent quilt and you're like, wow, my work is not like that. And then you feel bad or down about your work and where you are, but you're not also taking into consideration how long that other person has been sewing. Very easy to compare ourselves and our work to someone else's without taking into consideration how long that person's been doing it versus where we are. And everybody does that. I do that. I see people on YouTube make these wonderful videos and they have like 300,000 subscribers and it's so much work. And I'm like, wow, how did they get so many subscribers? How do they do their videos so good? And then I have to be like, you know what, Lisa, no. Stop comparing yourself. You're one person making videos by yourself. And a year ago, you had 4,000 subscribers. And now look where you are. And with each video, you learn how to edit something better. You learn, how to cut out some of the repeating stuff. I repeat myself all the time. But I'm getting better. And it's so easy to compare my work, my videos, my quilts, my patterns, my journals. It's so easy to look at someone else's and get down about myself. And I want you to know that I hope that you take it easy on yourself. And you know what? We're all going to mess up, just like this says. You're going to mess up. That's okay. You get frustrated, walk away, take a break. Go do something else. Come back tomorrow. Come back next week. Come back in 2 weeks from now. But don't give up on it. Come back and do it again. And it might be something that you have to do 20 times. But I guarantee you, if you don't give up, that you get better. And then before you know it, that's going to be down. You're going to have that skill down, and it'll be something else that you're struggling with that you have to walk away from and come back and do it again. Mess it up, do it again. Mess it up, do it again. And then you get it. And, I don't think that anybody, not even someone who's been quilting for 40 years, is done learning everything there is to know about everything there is to know about quilting. I don't think that we ever should stop learning and improving. And yeah, there was something about this that just really struck a chord, and I just want you to know that when it's okay to be frustrated, it's okay to walk away, but I just don't want you to give up. And I want you to come back, and if you mess up, it's okay. And please do not compare your stuff to anybody else's. And yeah, I love you. And just know that I say this because I love you. That I just don't want you to be hard on yourself. And again, we are our own worst critics, and everybody does it, but we really should not. So that's what I wanted to close with, is that. Now I do want to do a little bit of an experiment before we close for tonight, and I'm just going to see if I can catch up with some of your comments before I do that experiment because I'm not sure what's going to happen when I do that. Wow, there's so many comments. I'm going to have to read everything when I get off of our live video. But I'll just see if I can scroll through real quick. Oh, cyber hugs. Yes, cyber hugs. That's such a good idea, Patty. Your first quilt, you cut it up and used it for something else. Yes. Yes. Y'all are so nice. Bonnie, I think it's me who's buffering. I think it's on my end tonight. I'm going to have to go through and read everybody's comments. And I see that y'all did comment about the text and the topics. So that's good. I'm going to go back and review that. Maybe I can make it bigger if I need to. Pardon me. So before we close for tonight, I wanted to do an experiment, and it kind of goes back to one of our topics, and I think it was from Shelly, who asked, yeah, Shelly asked about the t-shirt quilt with the sashing around all of the blocks, and I said that we could do a workshop. And so it was like a week ago, I posted a video where I used my computer to make the video, and we did examples in Inkscape and in Brilliance. And I was kind of wondering if that same process worked during a live video. And if so, maybe this would be a fun place to do little workshops versus posting them on YouTube. So I wanted to do an experiment before we closed. Usually I'll come in during the week and do some little experiments, but this week has been this past full week has been so busy. I thought since we all are here, we would try something. Okay, so some of the issues that I was having when I made the video for YouTube. I made that whole video, uploaded it to YouTube, went to watch it before I posted it so everyone could see, and I saw that, you know how if you go up to the top menu and you hit file and a box opens up and you can print, you know, a whole box of different options shows up. None of those drop down boxes were appearing during the whole video. So then I had to go and watch a million YouTube videos and figure out what setting I was using that needed to be changed. And finally I figured it out, and I reshot the whole video, and that's the one that's up on YouTube. So I'm hoping that those settings work while you're streaming, because streaming is a whole other ball game versus just screen recording your screen and then uploading. I hope that makes sense. I've had to learn so much in the last couple weeks. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring you over to my screen. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to open up in Brilliance, and I'm going to open up a menu, a drop-down box, and see if that appears during our video. And then I'm also going to pull up my Facebook and see if I can scroll through our group and if that shows up. I'm not sure if it does or not, but I'm curious. So y'all be patient with me. This is still learning this part. But I think it would be helpful if this works and I get the hang of it. So I have my webcam and my computer screen. Okay. So y'all are gonna see that for a second. And then I'm going to close that for a second. And here's my desktop. I'm going to open up in Brilliance. And here's the full screen of Embrilliance. And we're going to go up to this top menu, and I'm opening up this drop-down box. And I'm hoping these little boxes that open up, this is really what I'm hoping shows up. Because in my other video, it did not. And so nothing made sense in that video. So if this box opens up, that is fantastic, and that means it works. And if not, then I need to figure out why that does not work. It's back to the drawing board. And so since I have that, let me open up. Oh, whoops. Let me open up a new tab. I'm wondering if you see my internet. And I'm wondering if you see my Facebook. If I open that up. If I go to groups. I'll be curious to watch this in the playback and see what all you can see. See how slow my internet is being? And I'm hoping it did not crash, which it might have. It still says we're live. This is the part I always feel like I look like a big dork. Groups. Here we go. Oh, I see it's showing up. Yay, so. Oh, goodness. See how slow my internet is being. Okay, so here's our group. So this would be fun. I don't know why this box is not going away. Ooh, see, there's our live video. Yay! Maybe I could read the comments this way. Ooh, Cynthia says she has never lost connection with me. So maybe it just looks like on my end that it's not working, and it actually is. I hope that it is. So this is awesome. We could scroll through our group real quick. I'm thinking it's showing up. So check this out from Wendy Joe. This is an excellent example of paper piecing. Look at the precise piecing. I love paper piecing. So, Dee, I'm so sorry. I did not see your picture before we started. So let's look at Dee's picture before we close. So this is great. I'm sorry, Dee. I started a couple minutes early to make sure that everything was working. And so, wow, you've been embroidering on towels. You are super busy. How many do you have to do? I still have 25 or so to do tomorrow. Wow. So you're using the, I call it a window and the stabilizer. That works so well. It saves so much money and so much time. And certainly if you're doing it for money, then you know that time is money. So That is so awesome. So I'm curious because I don't usually do embroidery as like part of my business as an embroiderer. But I once had an order, and I was like 45 polo shirts, and I designed a little logo that goes on them for a choir. And the first 5 shirts were so much fun to do, and then the next 5 shirts were sort of fun to do, but by the 20th shirt I was like, oh, I have so many shirts to do. So I'm just wondering if I'm the only person who's like that when you have lots and lots of the same thing over and over again. I always admire the patience when doing something where you're doing the same thing repeatedly. But I'm really sorry I did not see your pictures before we started. So this is great. I'm so glad I can share my screen. And that looks like it's working. So we'll close that. Whoa, there's so many things I could show you. I could probably keep going. But I also don't want to give too much away. I'm working on a secret project. So yes, before we close, keep an eye out for oh, you're gonna see the software. Do you see that? This is the software that I've been learning to do these videos. Keep an eye out for Friday's video. I'm making the video Friday. It'll probably post Saturday or Sunday. I doubt that I get it done Friday. Of the collaboration art quilt with Kathy. It's going to be a free pattern, and so I'm hoping that everyone plays along and shares your pictures over here on our group. We could just flood the page with hummingbird quilts. They're going to be small little art quilts, so can't wait to get started on that. I'm thinking that that is everything. Again, I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to go back and read all your comments. I'm going to go sit with Harlan. He's watching a series on Netflix, and I usually sit there next to him and read all the comments. And so, again, if you have anything specific you need me to answer, make sure you tag me, because that usually stands out, like I get a notification on it. But I've really come to enjoy, and I look forward to our Monday evenings. I hope you continue sharing your pictures. I think it's really fun to do a slideshow and really showcase and celebrate your accomplishments with you. And I also enjoy the topics. I think it also stretches me to learn new things. And it's a great way to share information with everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and go. And I hope you all have a fantastic week. I don't know what your week looks like, but I'm still working on this t-shirt quilts. But I have all of these sections done. So I'm working on a video tomorrow. Someone had asked if I would actually show the sewing of the large sections together. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow. And then I'll be quilting this quilt and then doing fun stuff on Friday with an art quilt. So, pardon me. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week. We will all get together over here on our group, and we'll see you all really soon. Good night, everybody. This is always the awkward part. Trying to find the button. So stop streaming. Bye. Good night.